So the constant refrain since last year has been the courts will not save us. Well, the Supreme Court won't save us, but the lower courts are doing some serious damage to Trump, especially when it comes to his revenge tour. I know the RICO trial in Georgia got tossed out, but Trump is hitting speed bumps on the road to fascism. As you know, a judge tossed out the indictments brought against Trump's two mortal enemies, former FBI Director James Comey and New York State Attorney General Letitia James. Trump fired Comey as FBI Director in 2017 when Comey refused to stop looking into Russiagate. Part 2 of the Mueller report clearly stated that the firing of James Comey was obstruction of justice. The Mueller report specifically said in Part 2, Trump could be tried for obstruction of justice after he leaves office. Mueller cited an Office of Legal Counsel memo written 20 years earlier that said it is not the policy of the Justice Department to prosecute presidents when they're in office. But in Part 2 of the Mueller report, Mueller said Trump could be tried for obstruction of justice once he leaves office. Here's how. And that's what Part 2 of the Mueller report was, a blueprint for prosecuting Trump for obstruction of justice. Anyway, Comey was fired in 2017, and upon Trump's return to the Oval Office, was indicted for lying to Congress back in 2020 when he denied that as FBI director, he leaked to the Wall Street Journal information about an ongoing investigation into the Clinton Foundation. These were leaks about Hillary Clinton that the Trump Justice Department decided to prosecute Comey over. They're saying he lied, that he was leaking. So Letitia James is the New York State Attorney General who won a bench trial last year, resulting in Trump receiving a $500 million fine for lying to lenders. That fine and the judgment are all being appealed. But she's one of Trump's mortal enemies. He cannot run a charity in New York or even host a fundraiser in New York because she sued him for stealing from the Trump Family Charitable Foundation. He settled out of court in 2019 while he was president. He agreed to reimburse the charities he stole from, and he agreed never to run a charity or host a charity event. This was while he was president. Civil lawsuit. You can sue a sitting president in court. Well, this autumn, she was indicted. Letitia James was indicted for mortgage fraud, the Justice Department claiming she misled lenders when she claimed a home in Virginia was a secondary residence when in fact it was a rental property. That's what the Justice Department claimed. The Justice Department said she lied on her mortgage to secure a lower interest rate by claiming it was a secondary residence instead of a rental property, right? So she got Trump for $500 million because he lied to lenders. They returned the favor by getting her on line to lenders for maybe $18,000. And now it turns out it was, in fact, a rental property. It wasn't a rental property. She bought it for her family and she didn't charge them for rent. So it was a weak case. It should have never made it to a grand jury. And it's why the U.S. Attorney for Virginia, Eric Seibert, wouldn't indict her. He wouldn't indict James Comey. He said there wasn't enough there. So Trump fired Seibert. He fired off an angry email. We all read it. He fired off that angry email to Pam Bondi, demanding to know why Letitia James and James Comey haven't been indicted yet. That email was accidentally posted on Truth Social. So we got to read it. Trump then replaced Seibert, the Virginia U.S. attorney he fired. He replaced Seibert with beauty queen Lindsay Halligan. She is a beauty queen. She's a White House lawyer. Her specialty is insurance. She's never worked as a prosecutor, but she was third runner-up in the Miss Colorado beauty pageant. Lindsay Halligan immediately, once she became interim Virginia U.S. attorney, she immediately secured indictments against Letitia James, and James Comey. And in so doing, proved herself to be an idiot, like can't spell, doesn't understand how the criminal justice system works. By now, you all know both the Comey and the Letitia James cases were thrown out by a judge who ruled Halligan's appointment as U.S. Attorney for Virginia was unconstitutional. Pam Bondi says the Justice Department will appeal. She's going to lose. She's going to lose. And the other problem for Trump is the statute of limitations on James Comey's indictment has now passed. So it's unlikely that the indictment on Jim Comey will ever be brought again, especially if a legitimate U.S. attorney is named. Theoretically, the Letitia James indictment could be jump-started, but the next U.S. attorney for Virginia has to be approved by the Senate, which means that attorney will probably be way too qualified to bring a flimsy indictment like the Letitia James one to trial. So there are 93 U.S. attorneys' offices spread out across all 52 states, including Guam, Puerto Rico, Northern Marianas, and Washington, D.C. So there are 93 U.S. attorneys who run 93 offices spread out across the country. Lindsay Halligan became the U.S. attorney for the state of Virginia. Some quick history here. Trump named Seibert as an interim U.S. attorney for Virginia, pending confirmation by the Senate. All U.S. attorneys have to be approved eventually by the Senate. An interim appointment is only allowed to last 120 days. Then the U.S. attorney has to be approved by the Senate, or a panel of judges serving the district where the U.S. attorney's jurisdiction is, a panel of judges can then vote to renew that appointment pending confirmation by the Senate. So Seibert, the U.S. attorney for Virginia, who Trump fired, Seibert served 120 days. His time was up. He wasn't confirmed by the Senate yet. So a panel of judges from the District of Virginia extended Seibert's permission to serve as acting interim U.S. attorney for the state of Virginia. When Seibert refused to prosecute both Jim Comey and Letitia James, Virginia, because Letitia James bought a second home in Virginia, and James Comey is accused of lying before Congress. And if you lie before Congress, sometimes it falls under the jurisdiction of the U.S. attorney for Virginia. Okay? When Seibert, the U.S. attorney for Virginia, refused to prosecute Comey and Letitia James, Trump fired him. That was in September, and immediately installed beauty queen Lindsay Halligan as his replacement. But the judge on Monday, who threw both indictments out, said that the panel of judges that re-upped the nomination, that re-upped the appointment of Seibert past the 120-day deadline, never approved Lindsay Halligan. Therefore, she has no right to serve as U.S. Attorney for Virginia, let alone bring indictments against Letitia James and James Comey. So she's illegitimate. She hasn't been confirmed by the Senate and hasn't been approved by a panel of judges from Virginia, federal judges from Virginia, who will approve a U.S. attorney to stay there until confirmation. Okay? So Trump's revenge tour has hit judicial speed bumps. Now, again, there was the RICO trial in Georgia where Trump was a defendant charged with trying to overturn the 2020 presidential election. He spent tens, maybe $100 million getting Fonnie Willis, the Fulton County prosecutor, thrown off the case. And now the judge just got rid of it. But there are some other 2020 election trials still active. So let me give you an update, because I talked about this on the last show. In Arizona, 3 of Trump's closest advisors, Rudy Giuliani, Boris Epshteyn, and his former White House chief of staff, Mark Meadows, were indicted last year for organizing the false electors scheme in Arizona, right? Boris Epshteyn wasn't indicted in Georgia, but Meadows and Giuliani were indicted in Georgia, partly because of the false electors scheme. So the false electors trial in Arizona, where Rudy Giuliani, Boris Epshteyn, and Mark Meadows were indicted, that trial ran into procedural hurdles. And nobody was quite sure if Chris Mays, she's the Democratic Attorney General for the state of Arizona, nobody was sure if she was going to continue the case, bring it up before the Supreme Court. And as you know from my last show, the deadline for her to decide whether or not to bring the case before the Supreme Court was last Thursday. Well, the Arizona Republic now reporting the Attorney General for Arizona, Chris Mays, is proceeding with the case. She's going to bring it before the Supreme Court to resolve procedural issues to get permission for this trial to proceed. Now, Trump pardoned Mark Meadows and Giuliani, but those pardons don't extend to state courts. The courts, the lower courts, are slowing Trump's assault on our country. Things will get a lot worse for Trump and his associates should Democrats win the House or the Senate. Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro, they were White House advisors from the first Trump administration. Remember, they ended up going to prison last year for contempt of Congress. With congressional oversight comes criminal referrals, which will go ignored by our Justice Department, but we will have a much weaker Justice Department. It's already incredibly weak. They can't fill posts. Nobody wants to work there. Nobody wants to work there. And if you're working there, you're really part of a law firm representing Donald Trump, seeking revenge, deporting people. We are going to have a much, much weaker Justice Department. As I keep telling you, this is a golden age for white-collar crime. If you're thinking of committing white-collar crime, do it now. You will not be prosecuted. Most of the lawyers inside this Justice Department, should the midterms be a repudiation of the Republican Party, most of the lawyers will be tied up in the courts, avoiding congressional testimony, trying not to turn over evidence. This Justice Department, and we all know this, is swimming in illegalities that will not stand up under scrutiny, under congressional scrutiny, or before our courts. This is one of the most underreported stories, and it's usually the stories that you don't follow that turn into the nightmares. U.S. District Judge James Boasberg is the chief judge of the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia. Republican, by the way. And he just got permission from an appeals court to continue a criminal contempt investigation into the Trump Justice Department's decision to ignore Judge Boasberg's order that forbid ICE from flying 3 jets carrying roughly 300 suspected gang members, including Kilmar Abrego Garcia. He ordered those 3 planes not to land in El Salvador, not to be transferred, not to have any of those prisoners transferred to El Salvador's glorified torture chamber. He said, turn those flights around. The ones that are in the air, turn them around. The ones that haven't taken off yet, they're not allowed to take off. They took off, and as you know, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, ended up in that torture chamber. There's now a Justice Department whistleblower who confirms he was told by Donald Trump's criminal attorney, Emil Bove, who briefly served as the number 2 man at the Justice Department in March of this year. Emil Bove said that in order to carry out Trump's mass deportation scheme, lawyers for the Department of Justice will have to start telling judges to go F themselves, but he used the F word. That would be Emil Bove. According to the whistleblower, Emil Bove told lawyers for the Justice Department, in order for us to carry out these deportations, this was in March, he said, you're going to have to be willing to tell judges to go F themselves. And one of the judges who got told to go F himself is this guy, Judge Boasberg. And he ruled that there is probable cause top Justice Department officials are in criminal contempt of his orders. He's also threatening to appoint his own prosecutor to try the Justice Department for contempt of court. This is very serious, and it will get even more serious if Republicans lose either the House or the Senate. And while Trump will walk away from this unscathed, his underlings probably won't. I mean, by the time Trump leaves office, if he leaves office, he is going to have to pardon his entire Justice Department. His entire administration is going to have to be pardoned. His entire family will have to be pardoned. Now, if you think that sounds insane, Trump pardoned and/or commuted the sentences for 1,589 January 6ers, including the head of the Proud Boys, Enrique Tarrio, and the head of the Oath Keepers, Stuart Rhodes, who were both serving more than a dozen years for seditious conspiracy for the role they played on January 6th. He pardoned them, so he's going to have no problem issuing blanket pardons for everyone in his immediate orbit, especially the Justice Department. So, this is why the Justice Department behaves with complete abandon. A pardon awaits them. Everybody blames the current lawlessness inside the White House on last year's immunity ruling handed down by the Roberts Court. It was written by John Roberts, the Chief Justice. So I disagree. I don't blame the immunity ruling, because had Trump lost last November, he would have been tried and convicted for both January 6th and the mishandling of classified documents. And I think that RICO trial in Georgia would have been continued. The Roberts Court's immunity ruling would not have saved Trump one bit. He saved himself by getting reelected. He knew either I win in November or I go to prison. He made a mistake after January 6th. He forgot to pardon himself on the way out the door on January 20th, 2021. No president has ever pardoned himself. Nobody's sure if they can, but I have no doubt that had Trump pardoned himself on January 20th, 2021, and if he had pardoned everybody involved with January 6th, after it happened, he and his band of miscreants, well, right now, they would have only been able to be sued in state and local courts as well as civil courts. So there is the pardon power. The immunity ruling last year means nothing if you use your pardon power.
You're listening to the David Feldman radio program. You sad, pathetic hump.